Where to start with what just happened in NASCAR this weekend? You ever watch a race, and halfway through it, you just feel like something big is building? Like the tension is there, the energy is off, and then boom, everything changes in a matter of seconds. That's exactly the kind of moment we just got. And honestly, it is the kind of stuff that reminds you why we love this sport, but also why it can be absolutely brutal. And here is the thing today, we are not just talking about one story. There are three major developments coming out of this race weekend, and each one hits a little differently. One of them could have serious consequences going forward, another shows the emotional side of what drivers go through, and the last one puts this whole situation into historical perspective in a way that might surprise you. So yeah, there is a lot to unpack here. But before we get into it real quick, if you are a true NASCAR fan and you enjoy talking about the sport like this, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe. This channel is just getting started. We are trying to hit 15,000 subscribers, and it is all about real fans talking real NASCAR. Everything starts with Bubba Wallace, and not in a good way. During the race at Talladega Superspeedway, we got one of those moments every NASCAR fan recognizes instantly. The big one. And this was a massive 26-car pileup that completely changed the race. Wallace was running up front when things went wrong. There was contact during a push, the kind we see all the time at superspeedways, but this time it escalated. He gets turned, hits the outside wall, and from there it is just chaos. Cars stacking up, nowhere to go, smoke everywhere. And we are talking about big names getting caught in this. Drivers like Tyler Reddick, Denny Hamlin, Kyle Busch, Joey Logano, and Kyle Larson were all involved. And it did not stop there. The full list of cars caught up in this thing is insane. 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 11, 12, 19, 21, 22, 23, 24, 33, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 51, 54, 66, 71, 77, 88, 97. That is more than half the field wiped out in seconds. Now here's where it gets serious. NASCAR has officially opened a formal review into the incident. They are not just brushing this off as Talladega being Talladega. They are digging into everything. Data radio communications in car footage, trying to figure out exactly what happened in that push sequence. Things like throttle input positioning intent. All of it is under the microscope right now. And depending on what they find, we could be looking at anything from no penalty at all the way up to fines points, deductions, or even a suspension. That is huge. Because let's be real, superspeedway racing is always aggressive. Everyone is packed together inches apart, pushing at nearly 200 miles per hour. One small mistake can trigger disaster, and most of the time, we call it a racing deal. And that is exactly how Wallace sees it. After getting out of the infield care center, he basically said what a lot of drivers think. You are on the edge every single lap at Talladega. One push at the wrong angle, and everything goes sideways. He did not blame anyone, did not point fingers, but you could tell the frustration was there. He knows how big these wrecks can get, and he knows nobody wants to be the one at the center of it. But then we move into the second part of this, and honestly, this is where you really feel it from a fan perspective. Wallace spoke to Jamie Little after the crash, and you could hear it in his voice, just straight-up disappointment. This was already his second DNF of the season, and that is the kind of thing that quietly kills your momentum. He talked about how they had nothing to show from stage 1, how frustrating it is, and how much it hurts the team, especially with 23's XC Racing and their sponsor Xfinity. But what stood out was this. He took responsibility. He said they need to figure out how to be pushed better, how to handle those situations more cleanly, especially with their Toyota cars. That is a driver owning the moment even in a chaotic situation. And here is why this matters even more. Because coming into this race, Wallace was actually having a really solid start to the season. Top 10 finishes in 4 of the first 5 races. P11 at COTA, P11 at Bristol, then a strong P5 at Kansas. He was building something, and at the same time he is watching his teammate Tyler Reddick go out there and win 5 races already this year. Wallace even talked about that with Steve Letarte, saying, "There is no jealousy. It is more like, man, when is it our turn?" That is real. That is honest. And then something like this happens, and it just knocks you back again. Now let's zoom out to the third part of this story, because this one puts everything into perspective. Everyone started asking the same question after the wreck. Was this the biggest crash Talladega has ever seen? And the answer is not quite. At 26, cars this wreck is absolutely one of the biggest in NASCAR Cup Series history at Talladega, no doubt about it. But it actually falls just short of the record. That still belongs to the 28-car pileup during the October 2024 playoff race. And before that, you had the 2003 Aaron's 500 with 27 cars, which for years was considered the benchmark. So, yeah, this one joins the list, but it does not top it. Still, the way it happened, classic Talladega. Lap 116, push gone wrong. Wallace gets turned. Smoke fills the track. Drivers in the back cannot see anything, and at those speeds there is just no time to react. You hear things on the radio like it is a parking lot back here, and that pretty much says it all. And this is why Talladega is always at the center of these moments. Nearly 200 miles per hour, tight drafting packs, zero margin for error, one mistimed push, one blocked lane, one tiny mistake, and suddenly half the field is gone. That is the reality of superspeedway racing. So, when you put all of this together, the massive wreck, the possible NASCAR penalty, the emotional fallout for Wallace, and the historical context, this was not just another crash. This is the kind of moment that can shift a season. If NASCAR decides to take action, that could change Wallace's entire trajectory this year. Even without a penalty, the DNF hurts in the standings, especially this early when consistency matters so much heading toward the playoffs. And as fans, we are left watching this unfold in real time, knowing that at Talladega, this can happen again at any moment. That is what makes it exciting. That is what makes it stressful. And honestly, that is what makes NASCAR NASCAR. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think this was just a racing incident, or should NASCAR actually penalize Bubba Wallace for this? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's talk about it. And honestly, here is my take as a fan who watches this every single week. I do not think Bubba Wallace should be suspended for this. I really don't. This looked like classic superspeedway racing to me. At Talladega, you are always on the edge, and when you are pushing at those speeds, it takes almost nothing for things to go wrong. One slight angle, one mistimed push, and the whole field pays the price. That is exactly what this felt like. Now, I do understand why NASCAR is reviewing it. When you have 26 cars torn up, you have to look at everything. You have to check the data, the throttle input, the radio calls, all of it. That is their job, especially when safety is involved. But from what we saw, this did not look intentional, and it did not look reckless beyond what we normally see at these tracks. If anything, this just shows how dangerous and unpredictable Talladega still is, even with all the safety improvements. And I will say this too, this really hurts Wallace at the worst possible time. He was building momentum this season. He was consistent, he was running up front more often, and it felt like he was getting closer to that next step, especially compared to Tyler Reddick, who has been winning races. And then a DNF like this just resets everything. That is the part that frustrates me the most as a fan. Not even the crash itself, but what it takes away from a driver who was actually putting together a strong run this year. And when it comes to the history side of it, this is exactly why Talladega never loses its reputation. Even when it is not the biggest crash ever, it still feels like one of those moments you're going to remember. 26 cars is not a record, but it is still massive, and it shows that the next big one is always just one mistake away. So yeah, for me, this is a racing incident, a brutal one, but still a racing incident. No suspension, just learn from it, move on, and get ready for the next one. But I really want to know what you think. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, go ahead and like the video, subscribe to NASCAR Nation Report. We are a new channel trying to hit 15,000 subscribers, and if you are into real honest NASCAR talk like this, you are going to want to be part of this.